I'm Nick Harcourt. We're here with Demonalban. We're going to talk about your new project, Everyday Robots. But first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
There's a lot of history to talk about before we catch up with what's going on now. 20 plus years of recording, obviously, millions of records, countless collaborations. What actually inspires you to get up and keep changing, to keep evolving?
I've always had a strong work ethic. I mean, my parents, both artists, but both had to supplement their income by being teachers. So in the evening, they'd come home and then they'd get on with their creative work. So I think it was probably instilled in me at a very young age that creative work was good.
What do your parents teach?
Art.
Yeah. So that was around, obviously.
From day one. I mean, I grew up in art schools, basically.
What about music? When were you first exposed to music?
That was pretty much my own journey, really. I mean, my sister learned piano and flute very briefly, but I'm the only one, only professional musician in the whole of my family. But a lot of artists scattered about.
So why music for you? What was the catalyst?
Catalyst? Well, I think it was having a piano in the house. I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, this record, in a way, sort of charts my life from growing up in East End of London, in a district called Leytonstone, and then at the age of 9, I went to Turkey for a little while, and then when I came back, we moved to rural Essex, and I came back, and I've from being a very ordinary kid living in a very rich multicultural London, moved out into barren Anglo-Saxon white.
Well, and
rural Essex.
You said you were in Turkey for a while before that as well.
Yeah. The summer of '77, I went to Turkey with a friend of my parents, which was quite a strange thing for a 9-year-old to be doing. And bear in mind, this was the Turkey of Midnight Express, so a very different world. And I remember being given a lot of freedom and being allowed just to sort of explore Istanbul on my own, which was, looking back on it, I don't think I'd let my 9-year-old daughter just travel with a non-family member on a different continent.
That was a crazy time. So that was the military government and Midnight Express time.
Exactly. But I only remember good things about it. Being able to just walk into a mosque and sit down and, not necessarily pray, but just experience that ritual. Tea houses and carpet shops. So it must have had a massive effect on me. But what I was you were asking me when did I get that music bug? I think it was post that when I came back and my parents had moved. It's not like they'd left without telling me. I was aware that they were going to move while I was away.
While you were in Turkey.
While I was in Turkey.
Okay, they'd gone. Where did they go?
Yeah, but nonetheless, when I arrived in this place called Colchester, it was such a you can imagine from being a urban kid, Turkey, and then out into the countryside, where, as I said, it was very Anglo-Saxon and very foreign to me. And I felt at that point, for the first time in my life, like a real outsider. And I think that's probably when I became, the spirit entered me, so to speak.
How old a kid were you when you first started writing songs?
12.
Okay. And then how did it develop from there into writing and starting to think about being in a band?
Well, I was in a band from the age of 12. I met Graham, guitarist in Blur, at that age. And we were very lucky. We didn't go to a particularly great school. It was a state school. But we had a fantastic music teacher called Mr. Hildreth, and we had there was the music building, but they also had this porter cabin.
Explain what a porter cabin is.
Porter cabin is. Well, porter cabin is a portable cabin.
It's a trailer, basically.
It's
right?
a trailer, yeah. We had a trailer outside the actual.
I just figured we should translate.
Yeah,
that
no,
a little
sure.
bit.
We had a trailer outside the music classes, and there's a piano, and we had a really basic synthesizer and a drum kit, and an amp, maybe 2 amps, and Graham and I tended to spend more time in there than out playing football or whatever, you do at break time at school.
What were you guys bonding over?
Music.
What kind of music?
Music and being maybe slightly, outsiders. But Graham was the one who had the real sort of encyclopedic knowledge of popular music. I was more, I've been more into classical music and sort of maybe more like music theatre, stuff like Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill.
So you're coming
Stuff I
from
was really
a
into.
very different place if he's coming from more of a...
Yeah, he knew everything about the Beatles,
Right.
the Who, the Jam.
Were you interested in that stuff as he started sharing it with you?
Yeah, I was. I always felt I was playing a bit of catch up with him
Right.
in those days.
So tell us about the beginnings of that band, of Blur,
Blur.
what you guys set out to do.
I mean, I'd have to cut a few more years because we went to finish school. I still at that time sort of believed I might become an actor, purely because I'd been in all the school kind of plays
Productions.
and music. Yeah, productions, exactly. So I went to I went to a drama school of very little note.
So was there like a simultaneous thing going on here of doing music and the acting, or?
No, I wasn't really thinking in terms of being in a band. We
Right.
just enjoyed making music
Got it.
together. Although we did have a band at school called Real Lives, and we did one excruciating performance at the morning assembly. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning. You've got the whole school, and you turn up. But it's good to do that. You have to, in a way, you have to have.
Your first gig.
Yeah, you've got to feel really awkward
Right.
for a long time, I think, before you start to sort of come to terms with everything.
So obviously the music wasn't something that you were planning on. Acting was something that
Well,
you
it was
thought
something
you
I
might
was
do.
really into, but I never for a moment imagined that that's what I'd end up earning a living.
So Blur,
It's-
when did Blur actually
Well,
form as a
few
as a
years
band?
later, Graham had gone to Goldsmiths Art School, and I'd left college and was just working, in restaurants and stuff. And then we got back together, and there was Alex was at Goldsmiths as well. And Dave was someone he'd known from when he was at art school in Colchester, doing a foundation course. And what had to happen really as a songwriter, I had to sort of stop playing the piano because I was kind of quite good. And so everything I was writing at that time on the piano was like, it was quite complicated, and it sort of, I don't know, it sounded a bit, I don't know what the best words. I mean, I always, in the past, have described it as sounding like Elton John, but, I wish it was as good as Elton John. It wasn't that good, but you know what I mean? That sort of, I don't know, piano-based. There was something about it, it was, I don't know exactly why it needed to change. But anyway, I at that point taught myself how to play the guitar. I started writing really simple songs, and that's when things started to happen. The ball started rolling, and because they were at art school, my sister was at art school as well, we had a sort of a ready-made cool following. of art students.
Sure. So were those the early gigs, art school
Yeah,
gigs?
but we'd always have like 100 really cool art students at our gigs, and you know we only played about 3 or 4 gigs, and then we got a record.
Obviously, you're already writing songs. You've already got original material. What influences were you guys drawing on at the time?
Well, I mean, at that time, I think it was you know, you really wanted to be as cool as the people who were on the cover of the NME.
So who was on the cover of the NME at the time?
It would have been people like Dinosaur Jr., My Bloody Valentine, Stone Roses, Pixies, bands like that.
Right. And that was who you were looking up to, or was it simply, well, these guys are on the cover of the NME?
No, we thought they were, you know, they had already achieved something which seemed completely unachievable.
Right. So with Blur obviously getting signed so quickly, tell us about the process of making Leisure.
Well, that wasn't a particularly happy experience. I think, you know, I was so keen to have a record deal. It seemed like such a big deal that I think with hindsight, we were a little too eager to please our masters.
Okay, this is not a new story, obviously, from bands.
Not at all.
But explain a little bit about what that means to you, from the point of view of
Well,
people telling you how you needed to sound.
Well, I think when you start out, I mean, at that time, you know, the music business was very different to what it is now. There was
a music business.
There was definitely a business, and there was a way of doing things. And, you know, unless you were very lucky, you generally got signed because they saw your potential to sort of continue a trend that was ongoing. You know, it didn't, you know, there never have been that many true visionaries in the music business. I'm not saying the people that signed us weren't incredibly important to us and really supportive. They definitely were, but you know, they were very eager for us to sort of fit into, you know, the sound of the moment.
Sure.
So I think we did that a bit. We tried to please. We were very, you know, naive, etc. Young.
Well, most musicians will say that, you know, the first record deal, the first record is the one where you learn all the lessons, and I'm being very polite in expressing it that way.
Yeah.
But by the time you came out of that...
But some people, they arrive fully formed, and, you know, it's perfect. And,
right.
and sometimes it's hard for them to ever sort of capture that again. So in a way, I think it's important to make mistakes, and I think that's what I've always. I wouldn't say I enjoy making mistakes, but I'm very open-minded to them and recognise the benefit of making mistakes. I still make mistakes. I think it's important to not be perfect.